Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining our webinar today. This is Revit Training Best Practices for Mechanical Contractors, brought to you by Evolve and BIM TM. Today, we're going to be going over a little bit about why Revit is a good fit for electrical contractors, or excuse me, mechanical contractors, some common beginners issues to avoid, and some mechanical specific features. If at any time you have a question, please feel free to use the Q&A function, and we are going to have time to get to questions at the end. If we run out of time and we don't have time to get to your question, we'll absolutely make sure to follow up with you after the webinar. And just so you are aware, this webinar is being recorded, and we will be forwarding the recording to all registrants. Thanks again, everyone, for coming today, and I'm going to hand it off to Alex Hanna of BIM Technology Management. Alex, you want to take us away?
Sure. Looks like we got some more participants coming in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to talk about Revit training best practices for mechanical contractors. So today we're going to be discussing kind of what Revit is, how mechanical contractors can use it, why Revit's a good thing to use, and what Revit capabilities have. So let's move on to the next slide. I know people are funneling in, but we'll just let that keep going. So who's BIM TM? So Evolve and BIM TM has joined forces to provide quality Revit training and BIM implementation. So BIM TM provides services as a custom content, project creation, project support, and educating companies on BIM. It's kind of who we are and what we're about. And then just getting with Evolve just strengthens that bond. Everyone who has Evolve knows the capabilities that it has. And then having that basic Revit knowledge behind it, you can do way more things. So mechanical and Revit in general. So Revit in general, if you're not familiar, is a 3D model-based software that can be used from architectural to mechanical MEP, architects, engineers, contractors, right? The benefit of using Revit is the fact that you can model something in space and you have sheets adjusted to that model. And when that space gets modified, changed, the sheets change with it. So you're no longer reusing or redrawing that same kitchen cabinet, we'll call it, 3 different ways. And then the knob changes and you got to change 3 different sheets for it. Another big benefit is with MEP contracting, you can model your services exactly to fabricatable level or to coordination level within the model. So if you're coordinating with other companies that are doing, let's say, electrical, so you have electrical conduits, you can bring that link in, and then now you can run your mechanical around it, or they can run around you. I think that's typical. So clash detection, coordination, and then the last bit, fabrication. So with fabrication, there are parts and pieces within the model you can use that can then be sent to your shop floor for fabrication, machines. There's a lot of capabilities Revit has, especially now with all the plugins. So barriers to get into Revit. Biggest one is probably leadership buy-in. So if you're looking at converting into Revit or thinking about it, higher up leadership buy-in is going to be absolute. They're going to be supporting the team as they move forward. Change is hard, right? We all know change is hard. So having that behind you to support you through that's going to be huge. Obviously, you need to get a Revit license, and then you have to learn the knowledge of the software. And there is a learning curve. But once you hit that aha moment, you know, everything becomes a lot more smoother and your workflow becomes more efficient. The next biggest thing is going to be the willingness to learn. Again, change is hard. So being committed to changing in Revit, being committed to wanting to learn the ins and outs, that's going to be huge when you're talking about implementation. When I say committed, I mean more of you're running AutoCAD right now and you want to learn Revit. So you're going to learn Revit 1 hour once a week. and then you're half doing Revit, you're doing CAD most of the time, right? It's kind of that knowledge that you kind of got to jump both feet in. You can do it slowly and implement slowly. But I've seen a lot of, I'll call it like basically burnout with that. You get people that are wanting to learn Revit, they do it once a week, and then they realize, well, this is too hard, I can do it faster in CAD, and then they stop before they even get started. So the first steps to get started is getting set up with proper training. So through an Autodesk certified trainer, Evolve has basic Revit training. You start learning how to move around the model, how items get placed inside the model. You get really comfortable with the UI. That's kind of like the biggest hump. And then once you realize where the buttons are and the keyboard shortcuts, the next thing you know, you're a wizard, right? So increasing your knowledge and skill is going to be honing in like your expertise or what you're specializing in. If it's, actually modeling the mechanical or annotating the mechanical or sheeting the mechanical. And then also introducing products like Evolve that just make your workflow that much better. So I think about one instance is I can place hangers in the model with basic Revit, which is incredible the way it works, right? And I'm thinking my efficiency is there. I can place hangers wherever I want. Evolve comes along, and then there's a tool that says automatic hangers. So you can select a service and select a hanger and select the distance and run it through. And I'll show you an example of that later. But that's where the efficiencies come in, when you start realizing what you can actually do with what you already know. So in Revit, there are two systems, I'll call them, that you can use, which are families and fabrication parts. So families are native to Revit, right? They are built within the Revit ecosystem. So you can make them look exactly like the parts that you need. You can make them to fit exactly what you need. Some definite pros there. Some of the cons are the database is hosted within the model or in a library on a server. And so if a family is in the model and it is built a certain way by a certain person, and then another person wants to adjust it a different way, it's very easy for them to manipulate that. And they have the same functionality as far as you can make them accurate, you can make them fabricatable. It's just the fact that they can change and they can be easily adjusted. And then there's fabrication parts. So fabrication parts are unique because their database is set in a separate software, CAD MEP, Fabrication CAD MEP, CAM Duct, and I think CAD EST. So those fabrication parts that you use with like CAM Duct on a CNC machine, those same parts that are fabricatable can then be inputted into Revit to create your system and service. So now you're modeling with actual parts and pieces that you can cut on your CNC plasma cutter. So the power behind that now is not even you have the power of Revit, where you're adjusting drawing, or you're not adjusting drawings, you're adjusting a model. But now you can actually build that model with fabricatable parts to scale. So it's no longer like I just need a 10-foot duct. It's this 10-foot duct now has all the cuts and bends and profiles I need to create the connectors at each end. Let me show you kind of an example of what that looks like. So here I have Revit set up and I have duct families here and fabrication parts here. And if you're not familiar with the Revit UI, I'm just going to do a kind of a quick overview of what you're looking at here. So at the top here, these are tabs, you have a ribbon, and then you have your separate panels. The first panel is going to be your HVAC panel. Then it moves on down through HVAC, through mechanical, plumbing, piping, all the way down to electrical equipment, fixtures and stuff. So in the HVAC, these are families. I can place a duct here. I can put a bend here and a bend here, right? So families are built to be placed easily within the model, but also families are built within Revit are built based on calculations and equations. So not every piece that is built automatically through routing preferences can be actually fabricatable. Like parts don't actually exist. Some people don't fabricate their bends, they buy their bends, right? Getting back into the UI, you have your fittings, accessories, flex duct, and air terminal. On the left side here, you see properties. So if I were to select a family, I can see properties on that. Family Pro. A lot of these have built-in parameters for a lot of the analysis that's within Revit. So you can do the analysis within Revit with these parameters. There's difference between type parameters and instance parameters. These listed here are instance. If I go to edit type, these are type parameter specific. System families don't really have type parameters, but there are routing preferences. Within the routing preferences, you can tell them what fitting you want at a junction or a cross or an elbow or transition. And you can fill this out and you can start building your duct routing however you want within your model based on your routing preferences. And then on the right side here, I have MEP fabrication parts. And by getting to that, I hit this fabrication part button and I load in a library. So in that library, I have ductwork, and within the ductwork, I have palettes that I can choose if I want rectangular, round, hangers, dampers, access panels. And just like families, I can route and draw, but how fabrication parts work is more so like a drag and drop. So I put it straight on here. And then I want to do a reducing elbow. I can use some spaces. Another straight. If I put one out in space, right? They have some options like there is, let's see here. I can do route and fill. So if I wanted to, well, I don't have a duct that size, sorry. If I wanted to route and fill to this one, it can't find the fittings. So it won't make up fittings to make that happen. I wonder if I reduce it, will this work? So now I was able to make the fittings based on the fittings that were in the MEP fabrication library that I loaded. And in here, you can add these if you want to require these or a 45. And I'll show you why here in a minute. Let me go ahead and finish this. And it's because these are on separate levels. But all this duct that just got generated here can be exported and sent as a flat palette or a flat DWG to your CNC machine. Now, how Evolve helps with all this, right? Your mechanical contractor, you come in here, your hangers, you don't put hangers to your model. If you want to add hangers as a family, it's going to be more finding a family to load in and adjusting to your duct. If I wanted to rotate items, you know, I can choose this button here to rotate some items and families. I can do the same. If I come through here, I'm just going to get rid of this. I can rotate these items. What I can't do is I can't rotate this one because it is further down the line. I'd have to disconnect it from the duct to rotate, and same thing for this one over here. Evolve is a tool that can actually rotate that so the whole arm can swing and rotate. So that's pretty easy for on the fly fast adjustments, especially when you're realizing that you can't go this way around structurally, you got to go that way around structurally. And then there is also cut optimizations. So if this duct is 23 feet long, and I can do it in, I think it's 5 foot increments, whatever this duct was that came in. And this is all set up in the database. But I select the duct, I can optimize lengths, and it will show me the different lengths, right? And it will show me 4, 8 1/4 is the optimal length for these. You can also see it came out with the leftover piece, and you also see some connectors here as well. Again, fabrication parts are fabrication parts, so they're filled with the connectors. And if I go to edit part, I can see the connectors it has. And these are, again, all based in a database that is built separately, either through CamDuct or CAD MEP, and then loaded in and built with. The reason I'm talking more about fabrication parts than families is personally, I prefer this because I feel like we should model to a fabricatable level of detail when we're doing construction of any kind. Secondly, Evolve comes with an entire library that allows you to use this to a fabricatable level. So if you're in Revit and you really want to get into some fabrication parts and start fabbing some of that stuff using those, Evolve will give you a library to use for that. And it's pretty extensive. And let me actually show you some more options Evolve has. Give me a second here. So on the right, you're going to see a short video. And right here, it's showcasing automatic hangers, and it'll showcase automatic union splicing and rotating fittings. So you saw me place hangers, you saw me optimize, you saw me try to rotate. So I would say in Revit, if I didn't have Evolve, I had a pretty efficient workflow. But now, seeing what Evolve can do, I can make my workflow even more efficient. I can rotate down the line. I can select a service of duct and determine what hanger to apply, and the hanger automatically applies. I can set those distances between hangers and how close they can be to connectors. With the optimized lengths that I was running, optimized lengths is determined by the actual size of that duct, right? Whereas this allows you to kind of set your optimized length, right? So if you're running pipe and you have 35 feet of pipe and you buy 10 footers, right? Or your 10 footers came in at 9.5. You can now optimize 9.5 for those lengths and know exactly how much you need. And then, yeah, that's the 3 I got. I want to thank everyone. I know this was really short and to the point, but I'm hoping to get a lot of questions back from you guys on, how fabrication parts can help getting into Revit, and then obviously some services that Evolve and BIM TM can do for you. Let's see. So do I recommend fabrication parts over Revit families? I'm trying to see the questions here. Let's see what you got. So I do prefer fabrication parts over Revit families. Specifically for the reason is when you model with fabrication parts, you're getting 2 size parts and pieces. You're not getting imaginary models of duct that doesn't include insulation or doesn't have the flanges and stuff on it. So when you're getting into tight spaces and you're modeling in like mechanical rooms and you're trying to avoid everything by a 1/2 inch, sometimes they're really tight. or even in between connectors, you can really dial that in with fabrication parts. And again, the best thing is you can just send it to your CNC and cut. Okay. So I got a question from Travis. Do you have to use CAD to maintain the database, or are you able to do it all in Revit? So if we're talking Revit families, oh, Marina would like to answer the question live. Marina, you can answer that? No, you're answering it. Oh.
Sorry, Alex. When I hit that button, it allows our whole audience to see the question. So,
Perfect.
Yeah.
This is obviously my first time doing a webinar. Do you have to use CAD to maintain the database, or do you have to do it all within Revit? If you're doing families, you can maintain your database within Revit. If you're doing fabrication CAD MEP, you're going to have to maintain your database with a CAD Induct or AutoCAD MEP, fabrication CAD MEP. And that's a pro in my eyes, because that database is now separate. That is, nothing can tamper with it other than the guy who's building on it. Let's see. So Peter, boy, can hangars be shared racks for multiple sites? Systems. Yes, it can. Yep, definitely. Evolve hangars can be placed quicker than in 3D when in 3D view. Julia Ora, possible. All I know is when you're doing automatic hangars within Evolve, it definitely speeds up the hanger placement process. There are a lot of little, like, I want to call them like quality of life buttons, you know, because they help that efficiency to make your life better. You don't have to really go through and place every hanger in the entire month. Can you model some stuff using the tools? So I will be doing that in another webinar. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. And then we're just going to keep going down the way. Does Evolve have Revit families that are Fab LOD, like Vic tools for Revit? Evolve, all the fabrication, you said families. Okay. Yeah. All the ITM families and mechanical, they're all fabricatable, but they're from fabrication parts. If you're talking fabricatable families, if the family has all the parameters necessary to cut and build, then yes. You know, what are some other ones? Okay. What evolve command did you use to rotate the end of the pipe run? So there is a rotate command, and I'll actually go back to that real quick. Let me pause that for you. So it is a rotate. Oops, I went to go pause, that didn't work. So your rotate command over here, Evolve Electrical. So even if it's under the Evolve Electrical, the rotate still works for fittings. Can you produce schedules from Fab? Yes. So there is some work that has to be done to map those parameters from fabrication parts to a schedule, but all the information about that part lives within the database. So from product codes to SKU codes to manufacturer name, materials, all that stuff live there. There are some workflows to produce a schedule within Revit about those parts and pieces within fabrication parts. I've got a bunch of questions coming in. Would you build a Revit schedule to get a BOM or fab parts, or use the CAD fabrication reports? I guess that depends on your workflow. I have done bill of material and fab parts within Revit. So if I'm designing and modeling within Revit with the fabrication parts, I would build my schedules out within Revit or bill of material, because I can still map those parameters out. Evolve will spool those two for you. Just trying to think, if you were to do it in a separate software, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But bringing it out of Revit into a separate software, making sure that you're tracking and doing a bill of materials from one software, not the other, that's just going to have to be make sure that's tracked and that's set. Let's see what else we have here. Can evolve spool drawings and create sheets in the same command. So that I am unsure of. I do know Evolve does spool sheets. As far as the same command, I believe there's a checklist and some stuff you have to go through for that. I don't think it's just simple as a button, but it does work like assemblies, yeah. Let's see. Is there any questions on relating to the mechanical contractor, why someone would use Revit? I'm getting a lot of questions specifically about Evolve. We can always do a follow-up on that. Is there a way to schedule out product entry, hanger diameter, size, parameter in Revit? Yeah, you can schedule out your hangers and get all that information and pull it out. You can do that either through, you can scope box and reduce your visuals so your hangers are showing. You can create all hanger assemblies. And you can do basically a takeoff of what's in that hanger. And you can do that with custom families. Some families have that stuff built in, some don't. Why do contractors use Revit over AutoCAD? So contractors using Revit over AutoCAD is, AutoCAD is flat 2D drawings, and CAD's been around forever. But what Revit does is reduces the amount of drawing time and increases the amount of coordination and fabrication time. So when you're using AutoCAD, you're using DWGs, you're trying to coordinate flat drawings with flat drawings based on heights and notes. Within Revit, you can coordinate all that in 3D as you're building it. In CAD, if I have different sections and elevations that sometimes share the same equipment, or equipment moves or gets adjusted, I have to then go change every single one of those sheets that equipment's shown in and gets adjusted. Whereas Revit sheets are all based around the levels and sections you create within 3D. So if something in 3D changes, that's going to change automatically on your sheet. If you have a mechanical equipment tagged with a number or value, and you change that mechanical equipment to a separate mechanical equipment, that tag stays there. There's things like that that increase your drawing time. That's why contractors are going to use Revit over CAD, is because of the level of detail you get down for fabrication, to make sure you guys are not clashing with each other's services. Biggest takeaway with Revit is also the information that comes with modeling, especially if you're modeling, again, with fabrication parts. 3D visualization, all that stuff, yep. What if a company standards with layers, blocks, and line styles already created? how do we convert to Revit? So we get back into the barriers. That's a very good question. So we get back into the barriers and things to start with. Let's do this one. Some first steps. So I understand as an established CAD mechanical contractor, you have all these things in place and systems are set up, and it's probably real easy to set up and finish a project. And again, change is very hard. The best thing you can do is probably start off with some proper training, get yourself in the software, and work with companies like us who can help convert your standards and line styles over. Layers and blocks are different within Revit. You know, you no longer turn on layers and blocks, you turn off items and categories. So if I didn't want to see the wall layer, I would just turn off walls as categories within Revit. Line styles can be determined based on what you're using. Yeah, it's change. That's all it is. It's just trying to get there and get everyone on that same level. Let's see what else we have. Is there a way to create spools without having to do assemblies? So if you wanted to create shop drawings without having to do assemblies, you'd have to, you can do your takeoff again by breaking down a scope box for that section. The only way to break out a bill of material for a certain section material would be for assemblies or scope boxes. Groups don't necessarily do that. But you could essentially put in a bunch of section lines and views, and put all those views on a sheet to create a spool drawing. Would not recommend doing that. I'd recommend going either the scope box or the assembly route for that. You're going to make your Revit workflow a lot cleaner that way. Let's see. Can you run calculations in Revit? Revit does have some analyze tools. You can run calculations for all mechanical, plumbing, electrical, so you can do voltage, you can do pressure drops, CFMs, and a whole bunch more. Obviously, you have to have a set system. So if you get your systems done right and you model everything correctly, you can run and analyze your systems that way. I would actually go through an engineer to confirm all that, but it's definitely a great kind of quick glance look and see what those look like. Material takeoff schedules. So yeah, Revit can make material takeoff schedules. It can make quantity schedules. You can do part schedules, plumbing schedules, electrical schedules, panel schedules. Anything within Revit that is placed or has some kind of information, you're more than likely going to be able to schedule it. And if you can't, there are definitely ways to create custom parameters and shared parameters to do so.
Great. We have about 10 more minutes for questions. So if you have anything else, please go ahead and submit it now. Again, we'll follow up with everybody after the webinar. If we didn't get to your question, we'll make sure to reach out. And we'll also be sending out the recording of this webinar so you can go back and revisit any of these questions. We love getting these questions from you guys, and it definitely will influence what topics we cover in the future. And we hope to make this an ongoing series in some form or another. So make sure you're keeping your eye out for more stuff from Evolve and BIM technology management.
Yeah, there's a question. Will there be a follow-up on more in-depth discussion regarding Evolve hangers? Yeah, we're going to be, like Maria said, we're going to be doing kind of a series going more in depth on all the Evolve tools. So just stay tuned for all of that. I have a question. If using fabrication parts, is it still okay to use Revit families for equipment and plumbing fixtures? Yes. So fabrication parts can be connected to families. Obviously, if your family and your fixture is exactly what you're looking for, you can very well connect your duct or pipe to it and then also be able to fab that. Let's see. If I have equipment I submitted on, does Revit have an equipment library? You can find a lot of families on the web. Just be cautious. So if you have equipment you submitted, like a, let's say like a roof unit, right? Rooftop unit, and that rooftop unit, you may go search to the manufacturer and download a manufacturer family. You may find other things on different websites like BIM Object or BIMsmith. Again, just be cautious when you're downloading those because those tend to have bloated sizes and a lot of things that are not necessary, right? If you need your equipment to be looking exactly like the equipment down to the embossed lettering on the side, then you can probably find that online. Also, you could find a kind of a placeholder for that as well. How do you keep pipes connected with Evolve? When I move pipe, it becomes disconnected from the fittings. So if you're moving pipe, you have a disconnect option within Revit. You also want to make sure that's not disconnected. And technically, if you drag and move, things should stay connected and stretch from when you drag and move. Let's see. Anything else we have up here? Is there a best practice when converting to fabrication parts from native Revit? I don't know if there is a best practice. Obviously, you have the fabrication button, so you can select your families and choose the fabrication button. And it will go through your fabrication parts and choose the best fitting for what needs to go there. It's not always correct. You're probably going to be best off recreating it with fabrication parts, or even at least just converting your straights and placing your fittings and transitions in. That's a tough one because I know Revit tries to make it easy with a simple button, but sometimes it does miss some parts. So just making sure you review it thoroughly. How about updating fab parts mid-project? So if you want to get updated fabrication parts like your library is updating, you have someone in the database updating the library, you would go to your fabrication parts settings again, and then you would reconfigure and reload. So if you reconfigure, you can then reload that same library in. You'd have to take that service out and then reload and then bring that service back in. Let's see. Yeah, we got a lot of Evolve questions. Changing dimensions and descriptions, do all parts already in the model update? I've never tried a mid-project switch, so I don't know entirely, but I would say if you are going to do a mid-project switch, maybe test it on a small thing. The update should happen with dimensions and descriptions. All that should be there. Whether the part gets updated in the model or the part just gets updated in the library, I do not know. I know the part, once it's in the model, it's in the model. You may just have to swap it out, but I'm unsure on that one. I don't want to tell you something I don't know.
Great. Thank you so much, Alex and Jeff from BIM TM. That would be BIM Technology Management, for walking it through all of this with us today and for answering these questions. For all of you who have more questions about Evolve, if you're a current Evolve user, you can always join the Evolve customer webinars, which are on the last Wednesday and Thursday of the month. So those will be happening tomorrow and Thursday of this week. And you can always find those at evolvemep.com on our website under the resources tab. You'll find all events and webinars. So thank you once more, everyone, for attending this webinar today. We hope that you found the information valuable. As Alex said, we'll be continuing this series and just doing more webinars, helping you gain Revit skills. Please make sure to follow BIM, TM, and Evolve on social media, and you'll find more demos and webinars coming up. As a reminder, once more, this webinar has been recorded, and we will be sending out the recording to all registrants. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great day.